Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy September 30th, the end of National Student Parent Month, but definitely not the end of this work. We are excited to be here at the grand opening of the Student Parent Action Through Research Knowledge Spark Collaborative. There has been a lot of effort that has gone into building up to this day, and we just could not be more excited about sharing it with you all and with the broader community, because this is really always been in service of the broader field, and we are hoping that you all see how this can be of value to you. Spark Collaborative started with a metaphor that Kimberly Salazar from our team brought to the fore, thinking about a sparkler, perhaps on the 4th of July or another celebration, and thinking about how when you bring sparklers together, you have a group and you join them, you can create something larger.
Yeah,
And that's
it took me a while, but I figured it out right before.
And if folks can mute themselves, that would be fabulous. Thank you. So when they come together, you can get something larger, and that's where we see the Spark Collaborative coming in. Everybody has their sparkler, their spark that you're adding to this work, and we are excited to create something that has a vision that we can be working towards together. So the vision of the Spark Collaborative is that we endeavor for pregnancy and parenting to not determine a person's ability to meet their goals. We also envision a future where all organizations and decision makers are coordinated and are working towards supporting parents in pursuing and achieving their goals. So it's about this, not only about the better future, but about the coordination that goes towards that greater outcome. For kids.
Teresa, you're on mute.
Thank you. The mission of the Spark Collaborative is to collaboratively build evidence and make the case for policy change to support pregnant and parenting students so they can meet their education and life goals. And we are inviting everyone here and everyone across the field to be part of this mission, to be part of the space that we're offering. The Spark Collaborative is stewarded by a working board with members across multiple organizations, as well as student parent leaders. The working board for the Spark Collaborative is myself, Jessica Lee from the Pregnant Scholar, who's here with us. I'm going to try to spotlight people as I mention them. Nina Owolabi, who is one of our STAR Fellows, who is at University of Illinois. We have Crystal Pale at University of California, Santa Cruz. I'm adding everyone, spotlighting here. We have Renee Reberg from Child Trends, Kimberly Salazar from the Urban Institute. We have Kate Westaby, also from the Urban Institute. And we want to give a special shout out to Clay Kilby, who is our designer, who made us pretty and set up a website that we hope is a good resource and tool for the field. So shout out to Clay, who has been very patient and very diligent as we work towards this day. And also thank you to our funders and supporters at Imaginable Futures, ECMC Foundation, the Annie Casey Foundation, Ascend at the Aspen Institute's Parent Powered Solutions Fund, the Urban Institute, and Michelson 20MM Pool Fund, all of whom have contributed resources that have helped build out what we're excited to share with you. So the plan for today is we're going to talk about Spark, and then we are going to share new insights on student parents from the 2020 National Post-Secondary Student Aid Study, which was a project that was collaboratively undertaken from the Urban Institute, Child Trends, and the Institute for Women's Policy Research. And then we will have a chance for Q&A and engagement at the end. We are going to track questions as they come in, but we are going to answer them at the end. So feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll keep track. And sorry, I'm just trying to. There we go. Okay, so talking about what we offer through the Spark Collaborative. Sorry, this is having technical issues with my computer here. There we go. So when we were first thinking about Spark, we were thinking about a box of tools. And when we were thinking about a box of tools, that felt a little bit narrow. So on one hand, there are tools, but when you think about what this is, it's more of like a tool shop. And we think about tool shop, you think, well, that's like for one kind of thing. So then we're thinking the best analogy for what this is like a maker space. I don't know if you all are familiar with library maker spaces that are often public spaces where folks can come together. There are tools, there's training, there's space, there's people, there's tables, there's ideas and creativity where folks are trying to build both their own vision and towards potentially something together with others. And that's what we're hoping Spark can be, is a resource space for you all to build towards what you're trying to achieve and be able to make meaningful change through powerful insights for student parent success. So current tools that we have for the field, and these may continue to grow, include a shared web space, which Jessica will be walking us through momentarily, virtual networking and collaboration spaces, a newsletter and shared calendar, resources for student parents, data and research resources, and shared branding. We want to make sure that resources for student parents is really elevated here, because this is not just a space about student parents or parenting students. This is a space with and for that elevates the power and the leadership capacity of student parents to be able to make change also for themselves. So with this, I'm going to pass the baton to Jessica, who is going to walk through the website, and then folks from our team will be talking about the different resources that are available, and we'll go from there.
Thanks so much, Teresa. I've asked to share my screen. I'm waiting for you.
Let's see.
Here we go. All right. Hi, everybody. As Teresa mentioned, I'm Jessica Lee. I run the Pregnant Scholar Initiative. We're based at the UC College of Law San Francisco Center for Work-Life Law. Really, really thrilled to be working with this amazing team to take all of the vision and excitement for Spark and to try to make it something tangible. And so this is one of those tangible things. It's our new website. You might be asking why so much buzz about a website? And it's because we're hoping this will be more than just a regular page, but can be used as a hub for connection and information sharing. When we were first thinking of Spark and what it could mean, we had a lot of conversations with folks that were saying, well, a lot of this work is happening in this crew over here, or maybe it's happening over here. The policy folks are talking to each other. Some of the student parents are talking to each other, but there wasn't that cross-pollination. People weren't using their sparkler to light another sparkler. They were staying in large part in silos. And so our goal with this Spark Online Hub is to give folks a place to kind of reach out of that silo, whether it's geographic, whether it's based on the type of work you're doing. Policy stays with policy, research stay with research, parents stay with parents. We want to have that cross-mixing. And we're hoping that the tools on our website can serve as a launching point for folks to be able to do that. We don't expect it's going to replace the work that's already going on the ground. We're hoping that work can be more efficient and more easily shared between folks. So here's the website, Spark Collaborative here. It has a little bit about us, which I know we're gonna go through quite a bit today for those of you who haven't been in these previous sessions. But I'll just start with the About Spark. Really, the core of a lot of this work was the student parent families at the center work. And we wanted to honor and celebrate that effort. And how Spark itself can help facilitate progress in each of these various areas of work. But I'm going to pass it back very briefly, I think, to Teresa to talk us through the values of Spark. You know, we are truly trying to build something collaborative. And in order to do that, we all have to be on the same page. Teresa, do you want to talk us through that?
Absolutely, I am glad to. So the thing that defines Spark is that it's an open and shared space. It's organizationally inclusive, and it's inclusive of individuals and groups that are doing work in the interest of pregnant and parenting students. What defines being a member of Spark is committing to 8 core values. These core values are to do work that is collaborative, meaning promotes meaningful communication and collaboration among organizations and individuals, work that is driven by lived expertise, which is supported by having pregnant and parenting students as part of leadership in work that relates to their interests, and that they are fairly compensated, that the expectations are realistic, and that they're supported in being able to be part of that. And we have resources to think about how others can also carry that out. That the work is cumulative, it's building policy and practice upon insights and lessons from the past efforts and from other people's efforts, so that we're not just recreating insights that have already been developed. That we are sharing knowledge, that we are crediting where knowledge comes from, that we are allowing folks to define their own identities and roles, that we are being inclusive, and that we are representing the well-being of the whole family. And I'll talk more about membership and what that all looks like, but these are values that have driven the way that we've tried to approach the development of the Spark Collaborative, and that we would ask others who are part of this broader community also try to carry forward. For example, we have our STAR Fellows, which is one way of actualizing the lived expertise, but there's lots of different ways that this can be pursued, and we want that to be centered in the work that happens.
Thank you so much, Teresa. So speaking of those STAR Fellows, here's our board with Teresa introduced. We also have some amazing STAR Fellows. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about them at some point, but we are absolutely thrilled to have these current or recently student parents with lived expertise really guiding the work of Spark and producing some amazing resources for the field. So want to shout out everybody here. I don't think we have time for the full intros, but we do have bios on everybody, and we feel really fortunate to have these student parent or recent student parent leaders so deeply engaged in the work. If you want to learn more, they're here under our people. Also, don't want to go any further without doing a second on that round of thanks for our funders, Annie E. Casey Foundation, Ascend, Ascendium, ECMC, Ford Family Foundation, Imaginable Futures, Lumina, Michelson 20MM, and of course, Urban, who's been anchoring so much of this work. We literally could not have done it without you. And we feel so grateful, especially for some of the funder engagement and helping us identify where the gaps in the field are and where we can be most useful. Thank you a million times. I'm going to move on to the next section, which is news and events. This gets me very excited here. So we have 2 big sections here. We have in the news talking about hot issues for the student parent world. This one I think is from my website, from Pregnant Scholar, talking about the Title IX injunctions. We also have big news on C Campus. We see this as a place to help gather news from across the field. Whenever there's something about student parents that's hot in the press, we want to see it echoed on this page as well. So you don't have to have a million Google alerts or be scouring the corners of the internet for the latest on federal funding. We hope to have it here so that you, again, have this one place where you can go to stay current on these issues that matter most to student parents. But now I'll pass it on to Renee to talk a little bit about events.
Great, thank you, Jessica. So on this page, we have a calendar of events related to student parents that are happening not just across the country, but also across the world. So this is the calendar for September. You can see we flagged the whole month as National Student Parent Month. we have today's event on here, 1:30 on the 30th, the Spark opening event. So for each event, you can click on it to learn more. And then there is if you click on the more link, it'll take you to more information about that event. So if you're hungry for more, after this event, there is a webinar this afternoon about student parent mental health. That looks pretty exciting. There are a bunch of events on the calendar already for October. But the idea here is really that this is a crowdsourced resource. You can come here to learn about events that are going on, and you can also submit either your own event or an event that you know going on in the field to help it get attention, to help others learn about it and be able to attend. So the type of events that we have on here, we have webinars, we have conference presentations, we have in-person events and virtual events. So we're trying to be really inclusive. And I did say worldwide. That 7:30 a.m. presentation on the 3rd is happening in Europe, which is why it is so early in the morning. That's East Coast time. But yeah, we're really trying to be inclusive here with the events and have this serve as a resource for the field.
Thank you so much. And I love that when you click on these events, it makes it really easy to add to your calendar and to share it. So I hope you will all of you listening will help us populate this calendar. You know, it's only as good as the submissions. So please, yeah, submit an event, share your information with us so that we can uplift it. Okay, now I'll pass it over to Crystal. Crystal, can you tell us a little bit about our newsletters?
For sure. Thank you, Jessica. So on our newsletters page, which is part of our news and events section, here's where you can stay up to date with everything student parent on top of what Renee was talking to. Our newsletter covers 6 areas: events and deadlines, insights and resources from the field, student parents in the media, requests for colleagues, Spark Collaborative updates and celebrations. You'll see our recent newsletters listed back where Jessica was at. And I'll have each a title and a brief description. You'll just click on it on any newsletter to read the full update. But if you want to contribute, we have that handy dandy tab right there where you can submit your own news. That's on our newsletter as well. You can share your events, insights, accomplishments by clicking there. We're also looking for associate editors. So if you're interested in shaping our newsletter, you can do so by joining through our Spark website and then filling out the interest form to get involved. But this page is designed to keep both practitioners and student parents informed about the latest opportunities, resources, developments in the student parent field. So just check back with it regularly for updates. And I'll go ahead and pass it back to Jessica.
Thank you so much. Let's switch over now to our resources tab. So again, with this mindset of being a place where folks can come to get anything you need on student parents, we want to uplift resources, research, policy memos, anything and everything related to student parents. You know, when we first started thinking of this, I had just come off of writing a big report, and I realized so many of the absolutely critical and insightful pieces of data and storytelling came from people's dissertations, or they came from very, very small, you know, folks working on their own, not with a major organization. And so this is one of the things that excites me the most about Spark is we're hoping to combine these resources to have a place where those folks' dissertations or that lone researcher has a place to have their work spotlighted and really be accessible to folks across the field. Particularly, I'm thinking of student parents who don't really know about this entire massive big field that has very long been operating, unfortunately, in the shadows. So we have here a resource library. I'm going to pass it to Renee to talk a little bit more about that, but I definitely Renee, make sure you give a shout out to our amazing students who I think are probably on the line here.
Absolutely. So this is the front end interface of a backend library with more than, I think it's 3,000 resources related to student parents. Like Jessica said, those are policy briefs, those are research reports, they're peer-reviewed journal articles, they're dissertations. My little nerd heart just expands with joy every time I look at this and the behind the scenes that is going into this. So there are a team of students at the University of Hawaii who have spent the last couple of months coding the resources behind the scenes, and we are very grateful for their hard work in making this a reality. This is just a preview right now. All of those resources are not up there yet, but will be very shortly. But basically, this is designed as a library. Each resource links out, each box here links out to the original resource, so you can easily access it, whether it is from all sorts of different sources. If it's on the Urban website, if it is on the Child Trends website, if it's a journal article, dissertation, etc. The University of Hawaii students have tagged these resources in a number of ways, so you can filter by type of resource. If you're really interested in podcasts, for example, you can search by podcast. By location, if it's a Spark original, that means that this team put it together, and we're going to be highlighting a couple of those resources in just a minute. Or you can search by keywords if you're interested in fathers, or if you're interested in single mother students, or if you're interested in graduate student parents, you can search there. And once again, we have an ask. If you have a resource that you want to make sure is included, there is an option to submit resources here as well. I would hold off on doing that for a couple of weeks as we get everything uploaded. But there will be a way to crowdsource these resources as well.
Thank you, Renee. My little nerd heart is also so excited. This is huge, huge, huge. One of the things that I'm really excited about in terms of the resources are the data insights. We're going to be talking about that later in this session, but I just want to flag that if you're like me and you're always wondering, what's the latest data? I know this has changed since that 2016 data set that we saw get so much play. This is a great place for you to go to get the latest number crunching on who student parents are. But I'll pass it back to folks to talk about that in a moment. For now, I'm hoping, Kate, can you talk a little bit about our resources that are flagged specifically for student parents?
Yeah, so this is one of the resources that we're building currently for student parents. This is the National Skills and Training and Action Research Network. So it's still under development, and we have 2 star fellows, Kateri and Lisi, who you saw on the other page, who are doing a lot of work in thinking through like what types of resources might student parents need. So we have some trainings we're developing, a network for student parents, mentorship, as well as some resources. So that's kind of a diagram of what is going on with that NSTAR group. So thinking about student parents and how we can support them in terms of building leadership and moving their work kind of towards a more actionable change work. So that is the resources for student parents, and you can find out more again about the STAR Fellows and their how we're bringing in these student parents to be a part of this research and this work as our living out our values. So I will pass it back to you, Jessica.
Thanks, Kate. So if you have been paying attention to the screen as we go, you've probably seen these join us buttons all over and our login button. And that is because what I've been showing you so far is the on the web, everybody set of tools that anybody can access. But we also have some tools that are just for folks who are in alignment, who are in some form members of the Spark Collaborative. Teresa, I want to turn it back to you to talk a little bit about the different types of members, and then we'll do a little exploration of those member resources.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jessica. And so I mentioned earlier that there are 8 values that drive Spark, and that is what defines membership primarily. So their first is the most broad email level of membership. Many folks on here are probably already getting our newsletters. That's probably how you heard about this event, but if you don't, you can sign up. And that is just a simple, like, subscribe to a newsletter. Anybody can access our website and all of the things that we've been sharing. If you register for the site, which you will need, even if you're part of our listserv, you'll need to register for the site to join as a Spark affiliate. That means that you're committing to uphold the Spark values, and that is going to give you access to some of the enhanced resources that Jessica is going to talk about in a moment, as well as an opportunity to potentially publish with Spark, which I'll be speaking more about, or become what we're calling a Sparkler, which is a higher level of engagement that I'll mention in a moment. There's no cost for this. We're not charging people. We just want to make sure that folks are sort of committing to and aligned with this value-driven effort. Then higher than that, there's a constellation member. We will be talking more in a moment that how we are standing up basically sub-networks. A constellation is a topic focused community that can meet either synchronously or asynchronously, and coordinated by a constellation captain to be able to connect with others who are, in a similar location, in a similar role, have similar policy interests, have similar personal or professional experiences. There's lots of different ways the constellations will form, so that you can, instead of having all these different email lists and all these different subgroups and everything, there's a place where you can kind of find and connect with communities that are relevant and interesting. And then finally, because Spark is a shared resource, we are inviting folks to also become, if you're interested, Sparklers, which means that you help run Spark. That means you might be a constellation captain, you might join a review board for publications, you might curate resources or edit the website or the newsletter, or hold other key roles. We'll be offering Sparklers an training and an honorarium to support their contributions. And we, again, to our makerspace metaphor, if you want to sort of be the person who's in charge of the table saw, making sure everybody knows what they're doing and they're doing things in a way that makes sense and that people know how to engage meaningfully with that powerful tool, that is basically our analogy for the Sparkler. So we invite you all, if you are on the website, studentparentaction.org, and if you are aligned with the values, to sign up as an affiliate. And there's so much more that you'll be able to see that Jessica's going to walk us through right now.
Thank you so much. So if we're logged in, you have quite a few tools here. So this is what it looks like when I logged in. It took me straight to my profile. I haven't updated it that much. I need to share some resources. But it's fabulous in that, those of us who've been in this community for a long time, we kind of know each other, right? We know the various Teresas. We know folks, hopefully in our home state, who are leaders in this field. But as the movement grows and as we get more student parents and more researchers join in, that work of mapping the field is really hard to do. It takes a long time. And matchmaking also takes a long time for those of us who've been in it for a while, although we often do it joyfully. So I love the profiles here. So you can find folks, you can look for who's in your state. You can say, gosh, I've heard of Renee a whole bunch. What is she up to? and go to the page, see her profile, see where she's located, and various areas of interest. You can also see the resources that each person has uploaded, what constellations they belong to tell you a little bit more about what they're interested in, so that you can do some of that networking, or you can find out who you need to be meeting at that next conference that's coming up. Yeah, find folks in advance of Gen Hope, right? Can't wait to meet you all. All right, the next section here that is special for members is our job board. Another thing we're very excited about here is the capacity for our members to uplift job postings that they have. And these can be job postings that are either for student parents themselves or for folks who are directly engaged in work to support student parents. So we've pre-populated this with a couple. We have one at Gen Hope, one at George Mason. You can filter by the type of position. Maybe you're a student and you are just looking for part-time work or an internship, something brief. You can search by some keywords and pull up jobs that are relevant to you. We hope this makes life easier for all of us, really. Again, with the goal of uplifting so that we're not all just sharing within our same silos. And again, like everything here, this is crowdsourced, right? So we really need folks to go here and submit when they have a job posting. I'm going to try the best I can when I see a juicy position to include it here, but it'd be fabulous if you could do it so you know the posting is right. So we hope this will be a tool for the field. Similarly, we're maintaining a space where grants and funding opportunities can be posted. So maybe you are a mom in school and we want to celebrate you. We want to give you more resources. Hopefully you can find it here. Again, this can all be filtered a little bit. And again, everything here we're hoping will be crowdsourced, a place where you can uplift the opportunities that you have available to reach a national audience. Again, this is all members only. Hope you'll sign up, join us, share those amazing postings, share those opportunities. It's hopefully very simple to do. And then we also have this interest form for folks to share various ways that they want to engage with Spark. But this matches pretty carefully with pretty closely with what Teresa just said. There's various ways to get involved. You could join as a basic member. Maybe you want to publish with us. Maybe you want to volunteer in one of these different capacities. It's all here. But one of the things that I'm really excited about, and I see somebody just flagged this in the chat, is will there be a LinkedIn group? We actually are building these constellations and networks. And I now would like to turn it over to Nina to talk about that.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep camera off to guard against wacky technology issues, but I'm so excited to just share a couple of ways for you all to connect with our virtual community. One way is the LinkedIn page, and hopefully one of my colleagues will be able to share the link in the chat kind of as I'm talking. As many of you are aware, this is a place where we're also sharing like resources, celebrations, kind of opportunities we're seeing in the student parent space. But we have such fun on LinkedIn that we will be extending use of the platform to support our emerging Constellation Network, which has already been mentioned, but really is a key aspect of the Spark Collaborative's work and values. And just reiterating what's been shared before, constellations are sub-working groups really united by maybe a common position or area of interest. And so ultimately, our goal in facilitating these groups is to open up that maker space, right? For folks to really catalyze the ideas on actionable change, whatever that might look like for the group. So I'm excited to see student parents connecting directly with policymakers and funders and folks working in institutions of higher education, really to see some cool research moving forward or other cool initiatives starting. And, you know, as was mentioned before, we do intend to roll out groups very soon, kind of based off of geography, role, institutional type, policy area, but also along intersectional identities or experiences. And ultimately, these groups, they will be moderated by a constellation captain who's there really to help, you know, make sure folks are meeting regularly, whether that's synchronously or asynchronously. They're also supporting the group toward meeting their stated goals. And just as Teresa shared earlier, captains will be trained and ultimately given an honorarium. And so this is where you all come in, right? Become a Spark affiliate, become a Spark member. And then once you do that, go ahead and complete our interest form, and just indicate your interest in becoming a Constellation member or even a captain. We ultimately need you to help build up these groups. And as we work on the training and more information comes, we want to be able to keep you in the loop of those things. So we're looking forward to seeing some folks sign up to be Constellation members and captains. So passing it back to you, Jessica.
Thank you so much. I don't know if anybody wants to do a virtual walkthrough of that. My my LinkedIn's not letting me sign in, so I can't, but we're good. Yeah. You'll see it. That's great. I do want to again just get you back to that membership. Very easy here. Get involved. You can sign up here. Those of you who are student parents, lots of opportunities throughout the coming year. And then again, that interest form that Nina suggested is right here up at the top. So please tell us how you want to get involved. And if we're missing anything, please also tell us that. We're really eager, again, to make this a tool or a toolbox that is as useful to the field as possible. And so if you're seeing this and you're like, I'm never going to use this, what I would use is X, we really actually want to know that. So please, please, please keep in touch. Based off of the feedback that we have gotten so far, you know, some of the things that we're thinking through was like start here navigation for folks who are very new to the field or maybe just overwhelmed by all of these various resources and need a place to center and orient themselves, including more project directories so that folks don't just know who is doing the work, but a little bit more in depth about what work is happening and where. I know as a policy nerd, a legislative tracker is on our wish list for sure. Especially as we see more and more movement, both in Congress and at the state level. And then we want to make sure that folks have access to legal assistance and other technical assistance where they need it. So we're also thinking of just adding some tools to make all of that a lot more accessible. But actually all of that comes from things that we've heard from you, from the field. So if you have more ideas like that, please, please, please lift them up. All right, so I think that is a nice whirlwind tour of where we are with our online tools. I'll pass it back to you, Teresa, to talk about our other.
Absolutely, that is great. So we've shown you a lot. We hope the website becomes kind of a visual table of contents. You'll also note that in this makerspace, we've built the structure, we've put in the flooring. I think the paint's still drying on the walls. There's some workbenches there. There's some initial tools, but we're going to be continuing to put the materials together in the coming weeks. So just keep checking back, check in with us, contribute your resources, but there will be more coming very shortly. I also want to talk about one other resource that we can get into that we wanted to offer the field and then give the floor over to the team that has developed a great set of new publications with this resource, which is shared branding and distribution channel. So through the Spark Collaborative, we developed the Spark brand, not as something to be proprietary, but again, in the spirit as something to be shared. So we have brief templates, we have report templates, we have presentation templates, and we know there's a lot of people who either are doing independent research and don't have a natural venue to publish it, or who are working across organizational partners and might not have enough. There's always a discussion, which organization gets the branding, which venue does it get published in? Renee and I ran into this last year with a brief we did together. And this is like, again, an organizationally inclusive option where it can be used for cross-organizational products or independent authors, including current or former student researchers. And there's more details that are still getting worked out. You know, the process and the review, what kinds of publication types might be kind of categorized, licensing details, although I do want to be extremely clear that if you publish with Spark branding, Spark does not become the author, Spark does not own your work, and you can use your work to the extent that you see fit to use it. So that's just important that is a principle that we are putting a stake in the ground about. But fill out that interest form if you have something that you think you might want to publish through Spark, and we'll get kind of elevated on the Spark website and be able to be very visible through the channels and a resource for this field. So I want to mention this before turning the floor over to our student parent data analysis team. But before that, I want to give Kimberly Salazar a moment to share. Kimberly's been with this project from the very get-go. She was part of the Leadership Council for Student Parent Families at the Center, and she has so much long perspective on how this has grown and what we're trying to do with it. And I just wanted to give Kimberly a few moments to share her reflections on this.
Thanks, Teresa. Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Salazar. I'm a research assistant here at the Urban Institute. And as a lot of you in the Zoom room know, I think navigating the student parent, parenting student, and caregiver landscape can often feel like we're swimming upstream. And as I'm immersed in the day-to-day tasks from the beginning of Spark, of when it was just a concept, I felt myself just immersed in like the small details and the demands of helping break down barriers for parenting students, families, student parents, caregivers. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes it's easy to lose sight of the incredible spark and magic we create in our communities. Recently, I started grad school and I purposely took a law class on voting. And I say purposely because I wanted to expand my knowledge in a field that was at the periphery of the student parent ecosystem and get a small breather outside of my usual work, which I know that would allow me to see the broader student parent, parenting student, and caregiver ecosystem from a different perspective and potentially spark, you know, some creativity in approaching the work from a new lens. And so I walk into this room full of law students and lawyers, and in the middle of the class, I think I finally felt what, you know, I saw the trees through the dense, I saw the forest through the dense trees within the student parent, parenting student, and caregiver ecosystem. I know you guys are probably thinking, what is this riff about on grad school and law classes? And I promise there's a point, but you know, as we know, the work that we do in our hearts never leaves us. And no matter how hard I tried to kind of, I just give myself space away from the student parent ecosystem. Ironically, I find myself reflecting on Spark in the class that I took a break to think about Spark and its mission and what it's done for me and what we hope will do for you. I thought about my weird comfort and lax nature amongst lawyers and future lawyers, which wouldn't have been the case otherwise. And I thought a lot about Jessica Lee, actually, the only lawyer and practicing lawyer that I know, and how my confidence and lax nature in the law class stemmed from actually the collaborative spirit of Spark. I might not have worked as closely with Jessica Lee otherwise. I think we always existed within this ecosystem in the same space, you know, crossing paths on convenings, virtual conferences, and, you know, just kind of rubbing shoulders in different works that we do. But it was actually through Spark that we formed a really valuable working collaborative relationship. And so this experience in my law class really affirmed for me that Spark is already acting on its mission of successfully bringing together individuals from diverse backgrounds who are passionate about investing in families, student parents, parenting students, and caregivers, One of Spark's many hopes is to continue providing opportunities for sparking connections like it did for me, and allow folks to learn amongst each other from different backgrounds, varying fields, scholastic endeavors, and lived expertise. And together as a community, we can really spark and amplify our impact, lean on one another as we continue to swim upstream, and celebrate the important collaborative work we do and continue to do. So thanks all for being part of this sparkly journey.
Thank you, Kimberly. Tears of joy over here, but we know there's been a lot we've accomplished, and there's still so much to do, and we're so excited to be doing this all together in hand in collaboration. So with this, I'm going to hand the baton to Lainey, who is going to lead us into the findings from this exciting research collaborative that really demonstrates some of the power of what can come out of this this work.
Awesome. Thank you, Teresa. And what a tough act to follow, Kimberly. I'm very inspired by what you just shared. So thank you for sharing that with all of us. My name's Lainey. I'm a research assistant at Child Trends, and I'm also a proud team member who analyzed the 2020 National Post-Secondary Student Aid Study, for NPSAS, over the course of this year alongside the Urban Institute, Child Trends, IWPR, and our STAR Fellows. And really, for the next half hour, you'll hear from all members of our team as we share our findings and get to the heart of the question that's on the screen. Who are undergraduate students with dependent children? So in terms of domains, we'll cover demographics, academic experiences, and additional data resources. But before we dive in, we wanted to take a minute to share more about our team and the NPSAS. And as questions pop up, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. This, admittedly, is my favorite slide in the deck because it shows the team that's worked very closely together over the last 9 months to make a meeting of the NPSAS. So from Urban Institute, we have Teresa and Kate. From IWPR, we have Afet. From Child Trends, we have Renee and myself. From the University of Washington, we have Jess. And we have 2 STAR Fellows on our team, Rebecca and Sharon. And together we've learned from each other, we've challenged one another, I think really collaborated with a real sense of curiosity, and collectively strengthened the work that you'll see ahead. And before we jump into the details, I want to give a quick note about our data source, the NPSAS. This data was collected during the 2019-2020 school year. And this study is convened every 3 to 4 years, starting in 1987. It's nationally representative. It combines multiple data collection methods that you'll see on the slide. And we also wanted to draw attention to the fact that the student survey started in March of 2020. Not sure about you all. I was about to learn. I was taking midterms online in my childhood bedroom in March of 2020. And parents were particularly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Students with dependent children were likely underrepresented in the survey, and the 2020 data may undercount student parents. We report in our work the numbers as they appear in the official data, but want to make sure that we draw attention to those considerations before we jump in. And with that, I'll pass things off to Renee.
Thanks so much, Lainey. All right, so let's jump right into how many student parents are there. In the 2019-20 school year, you can go ahead to the next slide. There were 3.1 million undergraduate students with dependent children. It's about 18% of all undergraduate students have a dependent child. Now, that doesn't necessarily capture all experiences of parenting among students. So we just wanted to caveat this with who is and is not included. So students with dependent children is a technical definition used by the Department of Education. This is based on children who received more than half of their support from their student. These children can be over 18 up until age 25. And these data come from financial aid applications, from student surveys, and other administrative records. All right, so that is how many, 3.1 million. Now let's go into who they are. There's multiple ways to look at this, and we're gonna start off by thinking about the whole student body. So out of the whole student body, who is likely to be a student parent? Here, I'm a sociologist, we're gonna look at race and gender. Thinking first about gender, 24% of all female undergrads have a dependent child. Men are a little less likely to be parents. About 11% of male undergrads have a dependent child, and 5% of undergrads with a different gender identity have a child. When we look by race and ethnicity, we can see that American Indian and Alaska Native students are most likely to be parents. 36% of American Indian and Alaska Native students have a child. 30% of Black students have children. 27% of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students have a child. And then 17 or 18% of Latinx students, white students, and multiracial students have children. If we then look at race, ethnicity, and gender combinations, sorry, can you go back one slide? Thanks, Lainey. The group of undergrads most likely to be parents are those American Indian and Alaska Native women. 44%, nearly half of American Indian and Alaska Native women have children. And that's followed then by Black women at 35%. All right, we can go ahead now. So that was one way to look at the population of student parents. Another way is to hone in on those 3.1 million students. What are their characteristics? So first up, when we look by gender, looking at the yellow bars here, 3/4 of student parents are women. 74% are female, 25% are male, and less than 1% identify as another gender. So we know women are overrepresented on college campuses, and they're even more overrepresented when we look at student parents. Then when we look by race and ethnicity, we see here in the blue bars, the largest racial ethnic group of student parents are white. 45% of student parents are white. That also means that the majority of student parents are students of color. So specifically, 21% of all student parents are Black, 20% are Latino or Hispanic, 3% are Asian, 2% are American Indian and Alaska Native, 1% are Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and about 7% are multiracial. Now you might be thinking, hold up, you just told me that American Indian and Alaska Native students are most likely to be parents. And that's true, 36% are parents, but they're a smaller proportion of the national number. So while they're most likely to be parents, they don't make up the numeric majority of student parents. All right, if we go on to the next slide, we can look at among student parents by age. Here we see with these green bars that student parents tend to be in their 30s. 41% of student parents are in their 30s, with smaller proportions in their late 20s and 40s. And this is in stark contrast to students without children, the vast majority of whom are in that 18 to 25 bracket. And then if we add in a sprinkling of additional demographics here, just as a teaser of what you can find in the rest of our brief, we see here that nearly half of student parents are married. We see that that's especially true among fathers. 71% of student fathers are married. About half are first-generation college students. Nearly 10% are veterans. 15% are immigrants. And about a third have income below the federal poverty line. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jess, who's going to talk about the academic experiences of student parents.
Thanks, Renee. As Renee said, I'm going to talk now a little bit about the academic experiences of undergraduates with dependent children, go over a couple of different figures that we have in the report. Next slide, thanks. So student parents most frequently attend community college and technical colleges. They also disproportionately attend for-profit institutions. Student parents are underrepresented at four-year nonprofit institutions, particularly at public colleges and universities, where only 16% of student parents attend. And 33% of all student parents are studying in healthcare fields, though they are underrepresented across many STEM fields. So next, we just wanted to touch on a figure that has come up before about student parents having higher GPAs than their non-parenting peers. So what we found was interesting. We found that student parents have GPAs that are generally comparable to their peers, except for male student parents who have significantly higher grades. We only have this descriptive data at the moment, so we don't know why this is the case. We have theories, but for now, we only know that male student parents have an over 0.1 average GPA advantage over their peers with dependent children. And now I'm going to pass it back to Teresa.
Thank you so much, Jess. I'm excited to also first celebrate this publication, which we're hoping will become a reference for the field. I want to also elevate some other data resources that we have produced, as well as some that are coming down the pike. So there was a second brief that we've put out in partnership between the team. Where do student parents attend college? This provides a snapshot of student parent attendance patterns using the 2020 data to understand attendance at community and technical colleges, public baccalaureate institutions, private nonprofit colleges, and private for-profit institutions, as well as the characteristics of students who attend these different institutions and what the patterns of enrollment look like, which we hope can be a good resource for policy decision-making and program development. And then we also have a suite of infographics galore that we produced. These are one pagers, they're quick reference, and we on purpose created a set of infographics that represent the a set of intersectional characteristics of student parents. So not just undergraduate student parents overall, but students who are enrolled at different types of institutions, specifically community and technical colleges and public baccalaureate institutions, undergraduate student mothers and fathers, single mother students, first generation students, meaning that their parents did not attend college, veteran student parents, undergraduate student parents who have disabilities, young parents, immigrant student parents, as well as the 5 major racial and ethnic groups that are available in this data source. So we have a little screenshot of an infographic here on the left, but when you go to that data insights page on the Spark Collaborative website, you can look for yourself at these resources. I'm excited to see the excitement around these because we are also very enthusiastic. And we hope that these can become a point of reference for various conversations that are happening in the field. We will also be having, we really want to encourage folks to become capable of pulling their own data from this very valuable resource. So there's going to be a video guide on how to access resources through the data portal. And there also will be another brief coming out shortly looking at the financial well-being of student parents. So look out for more on that coming out very soon. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of Lainey's slides here. I didn't mention, and I apologize because this is a big one, but I wanted to also give a huge shout out to Jess Warren from our team. If you go back 2 slides, Lainey, apologies for that. That we also have an infographic on graduate student parents. And this is a group that hasn't been talked about as much in the policy space, but obviously I think many folks on this call have had the experience of being student parents in graduate school. My own research has shown that graduate student parents, at least thematically, have many of the same challenges as undergraduates, and that we need to elevate the fact that student parents can continue past undergrad, can continue into graduate programs, that this is still a population that deserves attention and support, and that we can be thinking about holistic solutions across higher education that are not restricting student parents to only the undergraduate space in our policy discussions. So I'm going to pass the baton to Rebecca, because I think in my enthusiasm about sharing things coming up, I overtalked my segment, but I'm going to let Rebecca please share a little bit more about some of the other resources we have coming, in particular the financial brief, because you've just been such a thought leader on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. So first, Lainey, if we could go one slide forward, please. Everyone, as you've heard today, and as Teresa just kind of teased for you, among Spark Collaborative's 8 core values, we include collaboration and knowledge sharing and cumulative efforts. So it might not be surprising that we also deeply value data democratization. And to us, this means that we believe in broad access to data sets that can help us better understand and shine light on student-parent experiences. But it also means that we believe in helping one another to learn how to engage with those open data sets. So the NPSAS brief team decided we wanted to create a resource that can help anyone learn how to pull results from the National Center for Education Statistics PowerStats website. So if you aren't too familiar with the data lab tools from NCES, we hope you'll check out our tutorial video that's coming soon. It'll walk you through data pulls step by step using some of the variables from our briefs as an example. And the tutorial video will be released soon, so just watch the Spark Collaborative LinkedIn feed, our newsletter, and the website for updates. And as Teresa also kind of teased for us, we're really excited to share that in addition to the 2 briefs and the collection of infographics that we've introduced today, our team will be releasing an additional brief on the financial well-being of parents pursuing post-secondary education in October with a nod to Financial Aid Day. This brief uses the NPSAS data sets and other open source data to examine financial aspects of the student-parent experience. And our team really took a deep dive into the student-parents' expenses and financial resources. The brief highlights the financial resource gaps that can really create challenges to enrollment and degree completion for parenting students. We're really excited for readers to see not only what the NPSAS tells us about the real world impact of these financial barriers, but also for you to engage with our model budgets that offer a detailed portrayal of the financial resource gaps that student parents might face. And our discussion takes a multi-generational and intersectional approach to financial well-being and considers how institutional leaders and government policymakers can support student parents' financial security. So we hope you will engage with that when it's released in October. And at this point, we hope you're excited to review the NPSAS parent briefs, infographics, and the Data Lab tutorial. Our team is really excited to share these things with you. At this point, we invite any additional questions you might have about our NPSAS-based briefs, but you can continue to submit other questions about Spark Collaborative resources for the final part of our discussion. Feel free to either submit your questions in the chat function, or you can raise your virtual hand if you want to ask your question live. It looks like we have Britt Rhymes raising their hand. Her hand.
Hi there. Hope you all are doing well. My name is Britt Rhymes, and I am a part of the team here at Generation Hope. So first of all, thank you all so much for all of this information. It's been wonderful. I've been following along on the side on the website, so thank you all for that. Just a couple of questions, 2 questions, but I can separate them. So the first one, for years, we've been using the data that Black and Brown women of color are the highest majority of student parents, and that's from IWPR that we get most of that information, and that all student parents, especially mothers of color, have higher GPAs than their non-parenting peers. And so with that being, I guess now historical data, based on what you all have presented, and of course it was a little fast, so I wasn't looking through all the disaggregation in great detail, but are we to now understand that those numbers are not anymore? And if so, how did we pull that data, since the only repository for determining nationally who has dependents and who doesn't is through FAFSA, and we know that that doesn't necessarily delineate the difference between a sibling as a dependent or a biological or adopted child. I know that was a lot, but I see some head nods, so I think you all are following what I'm asking.
Thank you so much, Britt. I'm happy to take a first pass at that response if that's okay. But if others want to jump in, that's great. So I want to actually answer the second part of your comment first and then get to the one about GPA, which is about the data source. And this relates to a question that Eddie raised in the chat as well about the NPSAS as a data source. So kind of see if I can respond to 2 things at once. So Lainey hopefully kind of gave a little bit of context about this survey. The NPSAS, the National Post-Secondary Student Aid Study, is a study that combines different insight sources. So it starts with financial aid records before the redesign of financial aid that made that even harder to use for this purpose. So the old financial aid style where you could get a pretty decent-ish view of who is an independent student with a dependent child. It was a narrow definition, only about 60% of students complete the FAFSA, and it doesn't capture, as you mentioned, kind of sibling caregivers or folks who have more informal childcare arrangements or who are minority, care for the minority of their children's care, but are still parents. So there's a lot of constraints to that. But the NPSAS enhances the insights from the financial aid records with a survey of students that they administer in the spring term of the NPSAS year. So the financial aid records are pulled at the beginning of each semester within that academic year that the survey covers, starting so in 2019 and then 2020, or the last one was in 2015 to 2016. It happens every 4 years. And then the student survey supplements the insights from the financial aid records to be able to ask students if they have dependent children and capture students who aren't visible in the FAFSA data because of the constraints that we mentioned. That was, of course, the concern was that 2020 was exactly when they were administering the survey was exactly when the COVID pandemic shutdowns were happening, which we know disproportionately affected parents. Student parents were not so there were some populations of students that the U.S. Department of Education made an effort to oversample in that period to try to follow up with in an extra focused way. Student parents were not one of those groups. It was a pretty small number of groups that they did that with. And so we do think that there's probably some undercount in this data source in identifying student parents. So we've caveated that, and it's really laid out in there, but we do know more than the FAFSA, but with this big concern about the 2020 data. That said, Britt, to your question about the GPAs, I think it was a really interesting finding. Even the 2016 data showed something sort of similar, where I think that this statistic about GPA was getting a little bit muddled. So on average, student parents have higher GPAs than non-parenting students, and that is statistically significant. But when you break it down by gender, it's largely driven by student fathers. Student fathers have significantly and pretty substantially higher GPAs than non-parenting male students on average. Student mothers have not statistically distinguishable GPAs. They are the same as non-parenting female students, but they're not necessarily higher. So we've actually been taking the attack, and you might have noticed in some Urban Institute and other products that we say student parents have GPAs that are equal to or better than non-parenting students, instead of only saying categorically that they're better. But that's what they're seeing in the data that we've looked at. Does anybody in the team want to add anything to that?
I'll just highlight.
I appreciate you all. Oh, go ahead.
I'll just highlight what Jess put in the chat, that most of what we presented was not broken down by race and ethnicity, and you could definitely dive deeper there to answer some of your other questions you previewed there, Britt.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'll probably be reaching out to one of you all that just responded at some point, because we do use this information. You know, we want to stay current, of course, and we use this information to share with the institutions that we work with here at Generation Hope, and just in-house to use on a consistent basis. So I'll probably reach out via email to either get an email response or set up a quick call that I can, write some more in-depth notes about and really dig into the disaggregation of the data. So I appreciate you all. Thank you.
We're always glad to do that. That sounds wonderful. Kimberly, do you want to MC us to the next question that came in during the session?
The NPSAS questions, or are we wrapping up the Q&A from the chat?
We can go with the Q&A from the chat unless others have questions that they want to raise their hand to ask live.
Sure, I'll just pause for a minute and see if anybody else has NPSAS related questions, and then we can go ahead and start on the questions from the chat. So I'll just go ahead and pause for a couple seconds. All right, so if nobody has any questions that they'd like to unmute and ask, if you do, please feel free to raise your hand on the raise hand feature, but I will go ahead and start us off with the first question from the chat, which was from Lori, and they asked if we already are, if someone is already on the list, meaning the Spark list, do they need to join as a member on the new website?
That is a great question. And it also is a nice segue to make sure we explain the different ways of joining. So if you're already on the Spark newsletter list, you will continue to be on the newsletter list unless you unsubscribe. So you're already at that email level. But if you want to become an affiliate of Spark, then you will need to click one of those join us buttons and indicate your interest in joining. And then if you want to go to a higher level, then you'll need to fill out an interest form to indicate how you'd like to enhance your engagement, either by joining a constellation, becoming part of a, or publishing through Spark, or becoming one of the Sparkler roles that we've laid out, or something else. There's another category if you see another way you want to contribute. So yes, if you are already on the list, you do need to join as a member on the new website. And if you have any feedback about anything on the website, I'm going to take this moment to note that there's a link at the very bottom of every page that gives you a chance to report any issues you see, and we are very happy to receive that. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. So I'll go ahead and segue to the second question. Heather King asks, does posting a document on the Spark Resource Library preclude someone from publishing that same thing in another place? Journal article, report, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a great question. And I think there's a couple of things to tease out with this. Thank you, Heather, for your interest. I know you and I have talked about the interest in publishing. So the resource library is not only for Spark resources. We have resources from all over the field, and it's just like a library where we're just sort of giving the reference list so that people can find those. And most of them, unless they're Spark originals, link back out to the organization or site that those live on, so that you get your clicks and your hits and all of that. We're just helping people find your materials. So having something in the Spark Resource Library is really a kind of passive thing where we're going to have thousands of references in there, and that doesn't have any implications for republishing or other things. If you publish through Spark, so you use Spark branding and you go through the process, it's going to depend on what the rules are for the journal or other publication that you'd want to put it in, because it would technically be published as a standalone report. Now, most journals don't mind that if it's they call it gray literature in academia. If it's published as a report that's not peer reviewed and it's not in another journal, often they will still allow you to publish at least a version of it as a journal article, but that's going to be up to the journal that you're interested in republishing in. But publishing it through Spark with the Spark branding and all of that would make it a report that is published, and therefore it has been published as a report, if that makes sense. I hope that helps clarify a question, Heather, but I'm happy to talk with anybody about that more, or if others on the team want to add more, we're glad to clarify.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Teresa. So the next question by Heather Willoughby is, will there be a LinkedIn group? And I know that we touched on that a little, but if you'd like to just remind folks of our LinkedIn group.
Fabulous. And of course, these questions came in real time, so we might have mentioned things afterwards, and that's fine, but it's useful to repeat them because they were obviously things that came up for someone at some point. So there is a overall Spark LinkedIn page. And then the way that we are trying to organize the constellations is to have groups on LinkedIn. We went through a process of figuring that out, whether it made sense to build our own sort of like signature online communication space, or to use something that existed. And we thought that people were unlikely to navigate to yet another space. And so we're trying out the LinkedIn thing. And if it doesn't work well, we'll try something different. But we do think that a large portion of folks are on LinkedIn. And since it's a free platform that's easy to join, we're going to try it. But we will be launching those constellations once we get enough of those interest forms and we get some constellation captains set up. And we'll be rolling them out in real time through LinkedIn is the plan right now. And we will keep everyone who's a member of Spark updated as things, as we introduce new features or refine the ones that we're offering. And if anybody here is interested in contributing to helping set that all up, we're glad to have you. So just let us know through that interest form.
Great, thank you, Teresa. So the next question was by another Teresa. We are having so many it's in Spanish is tocaya, people with the same names. So our submissions, and then I'm adding of papers, content material, reviewed or curated, or is it just directly submitted from, hitting the submit button? And they noted perhaps depends on the item.
That's a great question, Teresa. So right now, everything's moderated on the website while we're sort of initially building things. It may be that we end up having certain users that get privileges to be able to directly post, especially once they're in the Sparkler role, or maybe have a sort of website editorial, role or responsibility, or there's another word I'm looking for, but that are part of the contributors to the website. But for right now, everything is going to be moderated. So it might take a day or two before it goes up. If there's something really urgent and you want to go up immediately, like the great news that we got today. So I was going to work this in. The great news we got today that the Gaines Act in California was passed, and California Competes and the Alliance for Student Parent Success in California, which is like our cousin on the West Coast, has just announced that our tireless efforts have been successful. Urgent and brilliant things like that, you may want to elevate it so that we can get it on there right away. We'll make sure that one goes on today.
Oh, thanks. I thought curated was actually a good option.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Teresa. So the next question we have is from Eddie, and they ask, since NPSAS does data collection in the spring, and these data were from mid-pandemic as well as springtime collection when the most marginalized students might already have stopped out, do we have any concerns that the numbers might be lower than they should be, or an undercount given all of those impacts, recognizing that we only have the data we have?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for bringing that one back up. I know we sort of addressed it in our earlier response. But one thing I do want to note that it's interesting because we looked at the like trend of student parents, undergraduate student parents over time. And it was interesting because it was about 1 in 4 for a very long time in the data. And then in 2016, that's where it went to 1 in 5, which is somewhat lower. It still rounds to 1 in 5. I think the 1 in 5 narrative is still accurate. It's 18% versus 22%. That still is about 1 in 5. But I do think that there's some undercount, and I think it'll be interesting to see if 2024 looks more like 2016 or if it bounces back up to 1 in 4. Although we saw that Teresa Bill noted in the chat that there's concerns that post-pandemic parents might be less likely to be enrolling in school, and it'll be very important for us to track what's happening and then be able to dig in from a policy perspective to understand why that's happening and how we can support parents to meet their education goals. And I see Stephanie just put a question in the chat about the portion of student parents for community colleges. And I am just going to take this moment as an opportunity to pull up if you all can see, not this, the website, so that you can answer this. You can know where you can answer this question yourself. So if you go to the resources and you go to the data insights, you'll be able to see the fact sheet for undergraduate student parents at community and technical colleges. And if you click download, you'll see 22% of undergraduates at community and technical colleges are parents. So that's probably somewhere between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5. It's 22%. And that is what the latest data are finding around student parents at community and technical colleges. If you also wanted to find that through our resource library, you could go here. We have our feature at the top, but you could also search community. I'm just going to search community. And we can see undergraduate student parents at community and technical colleges, and that would come up for me right there. So hopefully that was a helpful little demo. And it's interesting, Heather Willoughby asked the question about the trends. I'm sorry, Kimberly. I got excited about seeing Heather's
No, go ahead.
Heather Willoughby asked about what the trends were for 2008 and how much of it is economic driven. And what we saw in 2008, and you'll see this when you look at the who are students with dependent children brief, is that in 2008, we tracked both the percentage and the number, is that actually the percentage was fairly consistent, still about a quarter, but the number went up a lot. So what we would say is that student parents proportionally enrolled in college in 2008, relative to the spike in enrollment that we saw across the population in that year. So they were not, the percentages weren't affected, but the numbers were. Everybody else, hand it back to you to share other questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that we have addressed all former previous questions that were asked in the chat, and now it's just a free-for-all. If anybody wants to add it into the chat, PM me and or unmute. I noted here that I think, yeah, all of our questions have been addressed. So if anybody has any more questions, feel free to ask. If not, I will go ahead and ask our audience a broader question about what they're most excited about regarding both Spark Collaborative and or the NPSAS data. I know we have a bunch of data nerds here, which is super exciting. So I'll go ahead and add that question to the chat. And if anybody would like to either answer in the chat or unmute, you're welcome to. We just got a question from Jessica. Will there be a way to network through the website, see profiles, etc.?
Yes, there will be. You'll be able to, when you're logged in, you'll be able to see member directory. I will note that I made some enhancements to that yesterday that our webmaster is going to be incorporating in the next day or two. So it'll be even easier to filter by state and filter by role. So that should be coming up very shortly. But the website itself will provide a directory of folks who have signed up so that you can connect with folks. And Heather Willoughby asked if we can have a conference page. So on the events page, there's a way to filter events, and you can filter to conferences, and you can also change that to list view if you want, if that's an easier way to look at it. But we'll be putting conferences up there, and you can be able to filter that under the events. And if you have conferences that you want to elevate that are not on there yet, as I said, we're still putting all the tools on the workbenches here. Please do feel free to submit them. We'll make sure they're up there. And Lori was asking about having a donate button for supportive stakeholders who would like to. And what I would say is, like a library, we don't really have a great mechanism to accept cash donations unless it's through a foundation or a philanthropy or a grant. If you want to do that, that's great. Get in touch. But if you want to donate your time or your energy or be able to become a sparkler without the need for an honorarium, that is always extraordinarily helpful and valuable way to donate. And Kimberly has elevated some other questions that we had. What are you most excited about? What's going to be the most useful to you? Who else do you want to get involved? And how else can we spread the word? Or how can we spread the word? We saw there were at the peak about 70 people in this webinar, but we really, we have thousands on the listserv. There are maybe millions. We know at least 3.1 million who have a vested stake in this work, and we want to be able to reach everyone who has something to contribute. So how should we get it out there? I think this has been a great start. We are, again, so grateful for you all being able to be part of this conversation today, for sharing your insights and questions. As others come up, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our team is really excited to be digging in. This is just the beginning. So thank you all so much. Any other closing words from our team? We're really grateful to have you all here, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the Spark domain very soon. Have a great rest of the day.